Hello and welcome to the Business Interview. I'm Marcus Carlson. My guest today is Denis Kessler. He's Chairman and Chief Executive of SCOR. That's one of the world's biggest reinsurance companies. Its business, in short, is to insure the insurance sector itself. It's been a busy year with the earthquakes in Japan and New Zealand, as well as the Australian floods. Welcome to France 24.
Welcome.
Let's start with something that's in the news these days, the 10th anniversary of 9/11, the terrorist attacks in New York and Washington, D.C. in 2001. Now, you said that those events led to a shift in the entire global economy as well as within your business. Could you talk us through what you meant or what you mean by that?
First, no one was really insured against terrorist attack at that time, especially not in the US, because there was no terrorism in the US. And therefore, suddenly, you have those two, this major attack on the WTC, and the burden, the cost of those two attacks have been borne by the insurers and reinsurers, mainly by the reinsurers. And it took 2 years in the US to put in place what they call TRIA, which is a scheme for government to pick up part of the cost of any terrorist attack. It was not that case. It was not the case before. So, but the main impact has been, of course, a change of monetary policy in the US. To avoid a recession. Mr. Greenspan decided to expand the monetary base and to have a very low interest rate policy. It lasted for years and years and years, and the bubble started to appear and blew up. And that's why I always say that part of the consequence of the WTC is perceived today, because part of the crisis is due to the reaction to these incredible events.
Where were you at the time of these attacks, and did you back then already realize how it would change the world?
Certainly, because on the same day, I was at that time already in the insurance and reinsurance business. We're all in Monte Carlo because we have an annual meeting where all reinsurers were there, Swiss Re, Munich Re, Berkshire Hathaway.
And what was your thinking?
Lloyd's.
What was the communal reaction in that
immediately we had a press release. I made a press release, and we talked about an act of war in time of peace. And we said that the world has changed. The world has changed. We knew it at that precise time, that it would not be as before. So it was a radical change in the world. So, and people don't remember, but afterwards we lived for at least 2 or 3 years with, the trauma of an eventual new terrorist attack. Remember, many planes were grounded just because, we were really reluctant to insure those planes. They could be shut down, or they could be, they could explode, and so on and so on. Remember, with this white powder stuff, about a kind of biological attack in the US, and so on and so on. So, for 2 years, it has been extremely difficult to operate, just because we didn't know whether or not that was the start of a wave of terrorist attack, or that was just a unique event. So,
what kind of financial impact did the World Trade Center attacks actually have on the insurance business as a whole, and on your business in particular?
Altogether, we estimate about 50 billion US at the time, the cost of the WTC. There were lots of indirect effects, of course. I'm talking about the direct cost, of the WTC attacks. For my company, the gross cost is close to 1 billion. In 15 minutes, so it's quite a blow. We are not the only concerned. Many insurers and reinsurers were concerned by those events, and altogether, most of the companies had to recapitalize afterwards, just because it was not really, we're not really ready to absorb such a shock, which was
10 years on. Are costs still racking up to a certain extent? Do you have a full picture at this point of how much the World Trade Center attacks actually cost?
It took exactly 10 years to, let's say, to handle all the claims, because you have many claims. And it has been settled only in 2011. So it took 10 years to really pay all the bills and to be sure who was supposed to pay all the bills. Lots of litigations and trials and arbitrations and so on and so on. But I can say that today everything is settled.
I want to turn now to more recent events. It's been a busy year, to say the least. We've had the Japanese earthquake, the New Zealand earthquake, the floods in Australia. You've taken hit because of those disasters as well. Do you have the full picture there yet of how much of a hit
Yeah, sure. We have models. We know a book. We know a risk, and therefore, when you have such an event, it takes let's say 2, 3, 4 weeks. But we have quite a good estimate of the cost of, for instance, the Australian floods, or the New Zealand quake, the Christchurch quake, or the big Japanese quake. Remember that last year we had also quakes. Haiti, we had also a very big quake in Chile. So I mean, it seems that the world is a little bit shaken today, and so we pile up loss after loss. So the burden starts to be very heavy, but we've been able to absorb those losses. By the way, after the WTC, no reinsurer failed. There was no bankruptcy. And after all those natural catastrophes that we have for the last, let's say, 18 months, we've been able to absorb those shocks. So it's a demonstration of the strengths of the.
But will you be able to increase your profits this year in comparison to 2010?
No, it's going to be tough for all reinsurers, because the burden is very, very high. I mean, the Japanese quake is a historical event. We never had such a quake for the last 150 years, and lots have been destroyed. The Christchurch quake is very, very heavy too. We had 2 quakes, by the way. We had one last year in Christchurch and again this year. So no, we pile up losses. We absorb those losses, but certainly for the industry, it will be not as profitable as last year. Because we have this huge burden. And this is not the end of the year, remember, because after
we still have a few more months to go.
We had the big hurricane Irene in the US, and we had also an incredible series of tornadoes in April in the US, more than 420 tornadoes. We never had so many tornadoes. So the world seems a little bit, strange shape today, shaken by quakes and with typhoons, hurricanes, and tornadoes.
Your share value, it's tumbled since the Japanese earthquake. Are your shareholders understanding at this stage, or are they starting to ask questions?
No, the share price of all reinsurers went down just after the quake, but we went up to the same level after a couple of weeks, because this is a duty, a technique, a mission. A value proposition is to absorb those shocks, and good risk management, makes it possible to absorb those shocks. We are a self-reinsured. We are reinsured, and ourselves we cede part of the risk to what we call retrocessionaires. The technique is to spread the risk in such a way as to be able to absorb those big losses by sharing those burdens with different players around the world. So we have been able to do it, and the shareholders have absolutely understood, that's a mission and that we are prepared for such an event. So now we are certainly concerned by the financial crisis, but that's another story. That affects the asset side of the balance sheet, not the liability side of the balance sheet, but all corporations today are concerned by the development of the financial crisis, especially in Europe.
What do you make of the financial crisis? Will there be a global recession?
We start to be, let's say, an insurer, especially a reinsurer, we talk about probability. We don't say that's going to happen. We say there is a probability increasing or decreasing, high or low, for something to happen, be it a quake or be it a big storm. And so we say today that stagnation is there and that the probability of a recession is increasing, still low but increasing, and increasing rapidly. Right. We have no more degrees of freedom. That's a problem. We have a stagnation. We know that we cannot expand the budget deficit. It's impossible. Markets are looking, closely at public finance and the budget deficit today, and the monetary policy is already very accommodating. So it's very difficult to lower interest rates. They are very, very low, and the expansion of the monetary base has been done. So the tools, to avoid a recession, they are not there. So that's why the probability is increasing, and I hope that there will be no recession, but I rather anticipate a recession and be happy that there is no recession than to do the reverse.
Better safe than sorry.
Yes, sir. It's better to prevent, to prepare, to act. That's what I call risk management. And risk management is absolutely key in today's world, full of shocks, full of failures, full of disruptions, full of dislocations, full of discontinuities. It seems that, we lost a little bit the control of the world, and so risk management is absolutely key. Be it private risk management, a corporation has to face such event and to be sure that it can go through, but also public risk management. Governments have to be more attentive than before about all the shocks that can happen around the world.
We don't have a lot of time left, but I want to ask you about the future of your business. You made a significant acquisition earlier this year. You've just closed that acquisition in North America, which made you the second biggest life reinsurer in the United States. Are you looking for some other purchases or some other acquisitions in order to expand your business?
Let me digest. I mean, it's a big acquisition. We spread our wings, as we said. We're highly diversified. Why did we expand in life in the US? Because we were weak in life in the US, but we're very strong in P&C around the world. We're very strong in life around the world. The way we can absorb large shocks, such as a Japanese quake or whatever, a pandemic, is because we're highly diversified. So we have reached almost the optimal level of diversification, because what we know, when you have a quake in Japan, it's very unlikely that you have a quake in San Francisco. When you have, let's say, a big storm in Canada, it's very likely that you're not going to have a big storm in Europe. So, those are rare events. They happen every 30 years, 40 years, 100 years, 200 years, and so they never appear simultaneously. So diversification of my group is one way for me to absorb all those shocks, because they never appear simultaneously. Hopefully, until now, at least it has been the case.
But just to be clear, you're looking at organic growth at the moment, and you're not looking at any more purchases, or you're not going on a buying spree.
We just gave the new version of a 3-year plan called Strong Momentum, and we bet on organic growth plus a few initiatives for new products or services. And we think that we can reach 10 billion euros. 10 billion euros, that's $14 billion by the end of 2013. That's already a lot, for a company that only collected about 2.4 billion euros only 6 years ago.
All right, an ambitious target. Denis Kessler, it's been a pleasure to speak to you. Thanks very much indeed for taking the time.
Thank you.
And with that, we're going to wrap up this program. Thanks for watching.